why do so many Vietnam veterans refuse to turn their back on a country who turned its back on them?
That's an interesting question. When, the American Legion we returned to the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and those veteran organizations turned us away. And so Vietnam Veterans of America was formed, and the motto for that, sadly enough, was never again will one generation of veterans abandon another. So we started advocating for Vietnam veterans. It took 30 years to get Agent Orange finally solidified. But we couldn't see that happen to the Iraqi and Afghanistan war veterans. And so we welcomed them home. And that became our call sign, welcome home to those veterans. So we weren't about to turn our back on any veterans. We lived our credo, and we didn't want to see that happen to anyone else.
It's a great day to flex your freedom. I'm your host, Barb Allen. Today, I am here in our studio. I love getting to do a live interview with somebody when we get to be face to face, but it can be hard to arrange. So I especially pounce on the opportunity when that happens. So today, here with us live is our good friend, William Monsoon MImiaga. Maybe you've heard me reference him before. If you know me personally, you certainly know who Monsoon is. We have posted some super fun videos since he's been here for a week or two now. We've had a good time. We met Monsoon many years ago, my boys and I, when we went to this event run by an organization called Snowball Express. You've undoubtedly heard me talk about that before. I've put it in 2 of my books. Anyway, it is a really, really special organization that does some incredible stuff for the children of fallen service members and their surviving parent or guardian. And so that is where I met Monsoon, because like so many Vietnam veterans, he has come back to continue to serve in a different capacity. Of all the people that serve the families of the fallen, the Vietnam veterans are the ones that show up time and time again. So I always also talk about Vietnam veterans and my great affection and respect for them. And Monsoon is one of those reasons why. He is a Marine Corps veteran. He served in the Gulf War and the Vietnam War. He has been awarded the prestigious title of California's Teacher of the Year, not once, but 2 times. So he is all around awesome. And he's also got hefty doses of sarcasm and obnoxiousness, shall we say, that endear him to me a little more. So we can go toe to toe. Not many people can go toe to toe with me, but not many people go toe to toe with this person either. So it takes one to manage him. He needs some certain amount of wrangling. So come help me wrangle my good friend Monsoon today, as we're going to talk about service, sacrifice, freedom, and all things snarky. Monsoon, thank you for being here today.
It's a pleasure to be here. I'm happy to be here. And in fact, I've had 10, 12 days of a wonderful vacation. I got to see the fire team, hang out with Dave fishing, hanging out at cemeteries, and
He does have a cemetery.
It's just been a great time.
All right, so let's get into that right there. What is it about? If you ever have the opportunity to be cruising down the road with this man, you will need to plan an extra 45 minutes for every cemetery you pass on your route, or you will need to floor it or point out a puppy or something in the opposite direction so he doesn't see the cemetery, because he will have you pulling into the cemetery and walking among those. And, I think first I thought it was just this cruel thing he likes to do to widows, but he likes to do it to everybody. So what's the cemetery?
Cemeteries are like going to a museum. Instead of seeing the coats and the armor and the weapons and all that nonsense, here you go to cemetery, you're walking on the hallowed grounds. You're reading the tombstones. You're reading the names from the Revolutionary War, War of 1812, Spanish-American War. Reading about those heroes that are buried there, that served and sacrificed. It's better than a museum. You feel this connection. Unlike Pelosi, digging a hole and feeling the connection with China, Here you're basically walking around those, remembering, acknowledging, recognizing those that served and sacrificed. And it's just the history that's in the cemetery. You know, a widow that lost her 2 kids. Then she lost her husband. Then soon after, she lost her other 2 kids. And then she died 6 years later. I mean, just the stories that they tell that you find in these cemeteries. And going throughout this state, in the great state of Connecticut. My gosh, I've never been to Connecticut. Went to Connecticut. We passed a few cemeteries, but unfortunately, Barb Allen floored the car, distracted me, and zoomed by them. But visit these cemeteries. A lot of them are just homegrown plots. But the vintage, the age, the history. I mean, this one whole patch, just one sign out there saying, these are all for the those buried here that are unknown. Imagine that. It was like a half acre. Just people buried under those grounds. And I just find that interesting.
It is. And I'm going to say, I will hand that to you. Obviously, I had some cemetery issues for a long time. It took me a long time to be able to walk through them. But going there and doing that with you and seeing the tombstones from the Revolutionary War, the War of 1812, the Civil War, it is just a great reminder, even for those of us who do carry the weight of our freedom in some way. I never served, but I lost my husband in service. You have served and sacrificed. You've lost a lot of people you love in service, and your service cost you a lot as well. But even we sometimes need to kind of put things in perspective a little bit and remind ourselves. So yeah, I would recommend that. So Krusty, I call him Krusty, so just bear with me. It's Krusty O'Marine.
And I call her Lenny.
Because that doesn't make sense. But
Lenny does make sense because he's a big horse.
So
broad at the shoulders.
You were 17 when you signed on that dotted line for the United States Marine Corps?
I was 17 years old. I just, my recruiter called me in. I sat down and he said, what would you like to do? And I said, I'd like to be a pilot. And so he says, not a problem. Just sign right here. And we're going to make you a pilot, a jet jockey, Top Gun. I learned when I stood on those yellow footprints that he lied.
Do you know what? I have interviewed a lot of veterans, and you are... I was surprised at first to hear this. So many people said, oh, I really wanted to join the Army, but that recruiter was out to lunch, so I wound up joining the Navy, or I wanted to join the Navy. But then that recruiter told me I couldn't do it for whatever reason, and I wound up, joining the Air Force or whatever. Like, so many people have these just random reasons for joining the branch for choosing the branch that they chose, or sometimes the branch chose them. So those stories are always fun to hear. So look, you served in the Vietnam War, and Dave and I put out a video a year or two ago when the assault on our law enforcement officers was really just starting to show itself, right? It was really just starting to emerge. And we thought, what greater person to mentor the law enforcement officers who are being turned against and spat on and ambushed and killed than Vietnam veterans. When you returned home from Vietnam War, how old were you? How old were you when you were in Vietnam, first off?
My first tour, I was 18 years old. I came home, told my dad it'll be over in 6 months. And then 1969, 4 years later, I have orders back again. So that was kind of surreal. And it didn't end for quite a while. But speaking of law enforcement, it's shameful. Right now, Portland needs 400 law enforcement. Chicago, 800. New York City, 600. Nobody wants to be in law enforcement. It used to be a prestige thing. They used to be proud of serving in blue. And now this entire far left has just degraded our police, where they show a tremendous lack of respect. They're ambushed. They're mistreated. They're the criminals, not the people they arrest, because the people they arrest are turned loose by these proactive, progressive attorneys, attorney generals. They just let them free. So it's a meaningless task. Why arrest someone only to have them on the streets within 24 hours? It's shameful.
How many tours did you do in Vietnam?
2.
You did 2. So how old? And then did a lot of people, was it common for people to get out of the military if they made it back from Vietnam?
Right after their first tour, so many got out. And, basically, it was a lot of the Korean War veterans. We had some World War II veterans, Korean War veterans, and they got out, and they were soon followed by a lot of the senior staff NCOs that wanted no part of it, especially having to go back. Bart Gabriel, my good friend, who's now passed away of Agent Orange, we served together in '65. When I was going back for my second tour, he was coming back from his third. It's just unbelievable. Those that, in fact, did that serve 3 tours, and many did. Many volunteered to stay on, much like Bart did. He felt that, as I feel, as a lot of veterans feel, it was a noble war, what we were doing. Whether it's fighting communists, whether it was, fighting socialism, or whether it's fascism, whatever the case might be, we saw the people that we were fighting for. The Vietnamese people. It was a rice, they were growing rice. They were just trying to live out a meager living, just like our farmers did back during the Depression. They were just out there working hard, wanting to be left alone. And those are the ones that we were looking out for.
So can you draw a comparison and point that mug toward the microphone so we make sure to pick you up? Oh, these profound words you're speaking. Point them towards the microphone, please, sir.
I apologize.
You should apologize profusely. Okay. So is there a comparison to be drawn between the Vietnam and Gulf Wars? I haven't had an opportunity to ask anybody that, who served in both wars. So is there a comparison to be drawn? Like, can you compare your experiences in one war to another?
There's comparisons across the board. If you look at Agent Orange, it took 30 years to acknowledge Agent Orange. They recognized it, but it took 30 years for the VA to finally acknowledge it. And little by little, the presumptions for whatever disease, whether it be Agent Orange, whether it be liver cancer, breast cancer, whatever the case might be, it took 3 decades, and so many thousands died from it, never receiving the right compensation, the right medical diagnosis, the proper medical treatment. And so to say for the Gulf War, they call it the Gulf War syndrome, or what we have now in Afghanistan and Iraq, the burn pits. And once again, the years, they recognize it finally, but how many more years before they finally acknowledge that, yes, it has caused so many cancers. So from the Gulf War syndrome to the burn pits, that's a comparison right there that they prolong it. Send the veteran off to war, but when he comes home, let's not take care of him. Not really. We say we do, and there's a lot of lip service up in the Congress and the Senate, but it's not really taken care of. And some of those that you depended upon to take care of you, whether it be, they don't. They're just not there. So the VA has become an adversary, not an ally to the veteran.
Yeah, I spent 3 years as a veteran services officer helping veterans file claims and deal with the aftermath of their service. And the saying that I was immediately taught when I first started training was delay, deny, hope they die.
Yeah.
That was it.
That was it.
Would you?
Totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Totally agree. And here's the devastation. And not only does a veteran suffer and he's die, but he leaves back a family. He leaves back a wife, 3, 4 young kids. And
what's that like?
Yeah, right. You were left with 4 boys, but they were a fire team, I'm not one that advocates any service, because I'm proud of all our services. And so I try to stay neutral and not really show whatever service that I served,
Right. You never know. You're just very laid back.
I'm low key about the services. But,
no one ever guessed that you're a Marine.
Oh, no. And they would guess because I'm very articulate and I know how to spell. Everyone wished they could be a Marine. But you were left with a fire team. Fire team, Marine Corps, 4 troops. And that's what Barbara Allen had, 4 troops. And from little, and now they're tall oak trees and they're all doing so well. So it's a blessing to say, but to be part of that with Snowball Express, just wrap your arms around those families and see those kids, just hitting it off, having a good time once a year at Christmas. And now with the Gary Sinise Foundation, and so we know it'll continue on from 2006 to today.
So for those of you who don't know what Snowball Express was, I do try to focus a lot of my content or my talks on the people that step forward to help and the people that support and serve, right? So Snowball Express, into like a year after I spent one Christmas, I lost my husband. We went through one Christmas, and then the second Christmas I was contacted. The widows started talking, hey, there's some guy out there calling to see if families of the fallen want to go to Disneyland in, which one is in California?
Disneyland.
Land or World. So Disneyland in California, and get together and meet each other and all this. And we were a little suspicious of all of it, but we figured, well, what the hell? We'll get on a plane and we'll go and we'll see. And it turned out to be such a heartfelt, powerful, emotional experience where this organization at no charge flies the children and their surviving parent or guardian out to one location for 3 years. It was in California. And then it moved to Texas, and now our Garrisinis Foundation has taken over Snowball Express, and it is in Orlando every year. But we got to get together at one of the hardest times of years for us and celebrate and just see people holding up signs saying your dad is a hero to your children. That means so much. And so it's just it's more than a 3-day experience. We got to meet family, friends who've become family. That's where I met Monsoon, and Monsoon has been a huge mentor to my kids and me in ways over the years. So, and Vietnam veterans are a big part of that driving force of organizations like that. Why do you think Vietnam veterans continue? Vietnam veterans could have come home and to a country that turned its back on you all, and you all could have said, book this, I'm out of here. You guys are on your own, right? So why don't you guys? So why do so many Vietnam veterans refuse to turn their back on a country who turned its back on them?
That's an interesting question. When, the American Legion we returned to the Veterans of Foreign Wars, and those veteran organizations turned us away. And so Vietnam Veterans of America was formed, and the motto for that, sadly enough, was never again will one generation of veterans abandon another. So we started advocating for Vietnam veterans. It took 30 years to get Agent Orange finally solidified. But we couldn't see that happen to the Iraqi and Afghanistan war veterans. And so we welcomed them home. And that became our call sign, welcome home to those veterans. So we weren't about to turn our back on any veterans. We lived our credo, and we didn't want to see that happen to anyone else. And so Vietnam veterans hid themselves in the closet. They just didn't come out. They didn't acknowledge that they were veterans from Vietnam, because it was a bad time, with the protesters and even Giap said in North Vietnam, he said, hey, leave it up to the protesters. They'll end this war for us. And they did. It was a noble cause. I left both tours when we were winning, but unfortunately after Tet, everything turned south, and the politicians lost this war, not us. So basically we betrayed Vietnam, South Vietnam.
Is there a comparison between that and Afghanistan? And I'm asking this genuinely because it's really easy. It's so easy to look at the headlines and see the video footage of people clinging to planes and know all the equipment we left behind. So my emotional reaction and my anger, I lean towards thinking that we betrayed the Afghanistan people in some sense. But I am going to admit, I don't fully understand the nuances or mechanics or political implications of it all, right? But as a humanitarian side, I just look and see the people left behind and the way in which it was done, and the fact that the Taliban have now resumed complete control of that country, and it breaks my heart. But is that misguided? Is that an over exaggeration of things? We become the world's policeman, and unfortunately, by becoming the world's policeman, we want to carry that force of democracy to wherever we go, and it doesn't work. Afghanistan is a tribal nation. All those provinces are run by tribal warlords, and it's much like the Native American Indian. When the cavalry came in, they're taking away their sacred lands, their hallowed lands, the lands that the buffalo roam free. The Native Americans gathered together, even though they fought each other over land, over horses, over buffalo. They came together and they fought Custer and destroyed him. So much like that, the tribal warlords all came together and say, hey, we're not going to allow the British to be here any longer. We're not going to allow the Russians to stay here any longer. We're not going to allow the Americans to stay here any longer.
And so we went to war fighting tribal warlords. We fought the Taliban. The Taliban was our enemy. And then we just closed up shop. We just left. And our enemy now, they've become what? Our ally, the Taliban? Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. The irony of it all, it's much like, trying to understand the Democratic Party. It's not the party our parents grew up with. It's a mean, spiteful, hateful party that just wants to, are we going to edit this out?
I don't know. We'll see.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to get into the political part of this, but it is political because we left there with people hanging on airplanes, trying to get out. Much like, in the fall of Saigon in May of 75, people hanging on to airplanes, crashing helicopters on carrier decks, just trying to flee the country. The thousands that died, the boat people. And that's how we left Afghanistan. And we didn't leave it with any kind of an infrastructure other than, $40 billion worth of our equipment.
Maddening. And so my husband was killed in Iraq, not Afghanistan. And and the fact that he was murdered by another, so it's compounded, but it's hard enough when you lose someone you love. And then harder still when you feel like their sacrifice means nothing or was rendered meaningless in some, and you help the people that you help in the time that you help them, right? But the long-term goal, the long-term reason you were there is just taken away, right? It doesn't matter. So maybe you helped people for X amount of years, but you were just delaying the inevitable. You didn't prevent it. You just delayed it. So I felt like that. I felt like my husband went for a lie with the weapons of mass destruction, in Iraq. And then you have the people in Afghanistan, you have the Vietnam veterans who, saw that country they gave so much for and lost so much for, turned right back over to the people they went there to stop. What do you think is the point? What is the incentive for somebody to join the military today? Are you in touch with active duty troops? Are you in the community? Do you know, or do you speak to people who are considering joining? Like if I said to you, Monsoon, my kids would like to join the military in any of the branches, what would your advice to them be?
We have an all-volunteer force now. Less than 1% of the people serve. And, in my years of teaching, in the middle schools, I've learned this. These kids, when we had the draft, everybody served a minimum of 2 years, much like the IDF in Israel. You served 2 years. And if you didn't want to go into the service, you had some objection to carrying a rifle or something, go in the Peace Corps for 2 years. If you didn't want to do that, go in the Peace Corps, then go volunteer at a hospital for 2 years. But you did some type of service. The all-volunteer force was good because it brought in people that were patriotic, people that wanted to serve. But at the same time, it took away that patriotism that the rest of the country would feel. That patriotism where kids would know, hey, we're proud that their dad served in the military or that he served in the Peace Corps, or we're proud that their cousin, their uncle. These kids the students of mine they didn't know a veteran. They didn't know anybody that served because of this, the draft. We ended the draft and went to the all-volunteer force. And so this generation after generation of kids didn't grow up with any form of patriotism, discipline, self-discipline, motivation, paying it forward, helping someone else. That's why when I listen to your podcast, I see these individuals that you interview that have organizations, whether it's for horse therapy, or whether it's getting them a refrigerator, whether it's transition out the wire, whether it's getting them homes. These are the actual people, just few in number, but the actual people that are walking the talk. They're actually doing something. And so all these folks that you have on your podcast, that's awesome. They are doing something, and they're doing more than what our government's doing. That's for darn sure. So those are the ones that I have the great respect and admiration for. Many of them served because they understand what it's like for those that, what the need is, but there are many that haven't served, but they still want to do something, and they are doing it. I just feel that the draft should come back.
You feel the draft should come back? I did not know this about you.
Oh, yes. I mean, that way everybody, they don't have to serve in the military. They could serve in the Peace Corps or in the Job Corps.
This is interesting.
They could serve in
I feel
something.
like if I got notified or my kids got notified, hey, you're 18. Now the United States government has declared that you must do one of these things for the next 2 years.
No, only.
I see the value, but who is the government to say?
Yeah, but stop. It's shit hot to feel like you belong to something. And when you're 18 years old, you're going to get your education paid for. You serve 2 years on something that you choose. They're not saying you have to choose this, that. Choose something that's going to benefit society as a whole.
But who determines?
You determine it. You say, okay, this is the program I'd like to go into. It is a draft in some ways, okay? But bring back something.
But you don't think, so you're not saying you think the government, we should resume the government sending out this letter saying, hey, you're 18, for the next 2 years, you must do one of these things. That's not what you're saying.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying if you receive a notice, okay, not everybody does, but you register for the draft, you register to pay it forward, doing something of your choice. Unlike before, go to the military, Job Corps, go into the Peace Corps, whatever. No, you choose something that's going to benefit someone else. Being a volunteer.
Instead of going to the workforce or instead of college?
Yeah, go be a candy striper, for God's sakes. I mean, you're doing something for someone else.
Because this is an interesting point. Are you saying instead of college, instead of getting a job, instead of starting a business?
No,
in addition to?
No. In addition to, you could go to college, because what do you get from college? You get deferments, okay? Yeah. No, you don't get that.
You get radicalized.
No, well, that's true.
Yeah.
The left wing, it's all professors are so far left wing, Yes, you get deferments at college. So you're going to do something that's going to be beneficial for someone else.
Okay, I hear you, and I agree with you. I'm just trying to figure this out. But are you saying you should do that because the government tells you to and makes you do it?
You have to have a force to drive you. Otherwise, you're going to sit there and play Xbox all day long till you're 36 years old.
So the government should say, hey, for the next 2 years, you must verify that you've done some level of service and it has to meet our criteria.
Doesn't it? Yes.
Wild. Oh, this is going to bring out a lot. What do you think, you guys, listening to this? It is an interesting topic because I agree with you in principle. I agree with you in concept that, yes, we should all go out and serve in some capacity. What is the slippery slope, especially with these motherfuckers in office now? Who's to say what that service should be, right? Who's to say? Who gets to decide what that service should be? And that's the...
Okay, look, AOC, I believe...
No, you did not.
Look, you're leaning, and let's keep this... Gosh.
Yeah, because you see, I just questioned you. I just wanted to know more information, but you just spouted off some good, naive, this would be wonderful if everybody served. But you didn't really think that shit through. You were just like, no, I think everybody should serve. But then...
Stop. But, we had 16 million. When the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, we had 16 million men in uniform. We had Rosie the Riveteer. The women flooded the workforce, Yeah. We brought in the Bracero program and worked the fields, free a man to fight. 16 million became patriot, and they went away for 5 years fighting World War II. And today is August 14th, the day the Japanese surrendered. So, we should be grateful for that. That's this date, 1945. And if you go to my Facebook, you could see Harry Truman announcing it. Now, having said that, 16 million served, 400,000 served and sacrificed. So if you think about that, those were proud, patriotic Americans. And so, yes, they enlisted initially. But then in 43, we were shortage of manpower, so they started the draft, started bringing them in. But they didn't hesitate. They went, they served.
I hear you. And I just say it is a really tricky area because on the one hand, you agree with it. Yes, we need to step forward and serve. And now our country is so freaking muddled. Should Americans get drafted while we have illegals pouring over our border and getting free phones and buses everywhere? So imagine this. If if we go to war now and Americans are all drafted, so Americans are all fighting the war, who's left here? It's the freaking illegals to take over our country. Like, what would happen? Haven't we created such a disaster in this country? It's crazy.
You're absolutely right. We are a nation of laws.
Well, we
used to be. Used to be a nation of laws. And when, when you have police officers that are dying, then I say, that are being ambushed and nothing being done about it. I'm all for Judge Roy Bean. I'm all for frontier justice. Let's go back to those days when justice was applied, equally across the board. And not in the past days, but today it should be equally passed. But it's not. It's ignored. And so you're right. We're a game of we're a muddled society right now.
How do we get it back?
We get it back by bringing President Trump back with DeSantis as his vice president, and God, that would be a ticket right there.
Wow.
We take back over the House and we get rid of Pelosi, Schumer, we get rid of Adam Schiff, we get rid of the AOC, we get rid of the Squad.
Which, by the way, if you ever call me AOC again, you're going to die in your sleep. That's kind.
We get rid of the people that are the swamp. And if anybody, and I'm not saying this, the Democratic Party was a good party at one time, maybe. But today it's not. And so many people are blinded. Oh, I'm so happy to be paying $5.69 for a gallon of gas now. In fact, they lowered it 8 cents. When 2 years ago, you were paying $2 for it. So it's doubled. And you're happy? Come on. Food prices gone up, lumber, literally. How's construction happening? The housing market is just off the wall. And so how are we surviving today?
What do you think is being done? You're a California teacher twice. Talk about the kind of school you taught in, because this plays into what you were just talking about. What was the school you taught? Was it like a prestigious school you taught at? Was it a private school? Was it a public? Talk about the school.
The schools I taught in Hawaii and I taught in California, and the schools I taught at, they offered me a stipend. Hey, Monsoon, you want to go teach? You want $5,000? I said, yeah, shit hot. I'll take your $5,000. And they said, you have to teach in a predominantly gang-infested area. It's in a school that's doesn't have a great reputation. It's an inner-city school. I said, okay, you have to teach for 5 years. We're giving you $1,000 bonus for teaching 5 years. I said, I'll take it. So I taught special education. I taught emotionally disturbed kids, a couple of years behind in education. But they weren't emotionally disturbed. They were just gangbangers. They were foster kids. They were kids that, a parent was in prison for drugs, or mom OD'd on drugs. Mom was selling drugs, got arrested. Aunts or uncles were raising them. They live in HUD housing, where at night, the gunfire, night fights, and all this went on. They just needed some direction. I was asked by one superintendent, what's the worst thing you have to do with these kids? And I says, send them back home after the day's over.
Oh, wow.
They found refuge at school. And grudgingly, over time, they realized that you cared for them. And so and so they listened. And a lot of them found success.
So in the time that you were teaching, what years did your teaching career?
I taught for 23 years. So it was 1998 to, I was in Hawaii too. So in 97, 96. And then I just retired a year ago.
Okay. So you still have a current pulse, like you have your thumb on the pulse still a little, where you can still speak about, because I know a lot of parents are pushing back against the school district curriculum.
Parents are not domestic terrorists, okay? Let's get that down there, Attorney General. They're not domestic terrorists. They're parents concerned about their kids reading about their sexual exploits when they're in first grade of masturbation and all this other crap when they're in first grade. Give me a break. What happened to the reading, arithmetic, and writing? What happened to those days? We got through it okay. We're educated.
I think our education system was already packed with enough meaningless garbage in the first place. Like,
absolutely.
who cares? Like, we just learned so much unnecessary stuff in school in the first place, and now they're packing it with just dangerous stuff. But is that true? Did you see that in your school district? Did your school district push any kind of agenda that some parents would call radical, in terms of CRT or the sexuality of children?
The CRT, we taught, here's the in school. We did away with geography. We did away with American studies, history.
Totally? You taught no geography?
Pretty much. Oh, geography's gone. We did away with the metal shop, the carpenter shop, the wood shop, the automotive shop. All these are gone, and they brought in dance. Oh, what dance? Give these kids something to get their hands dirty. Teach them in the metal shop how to weld. Teach them how to fix a car. Whatever, all those are gone, and they bring in all these progressive things like dance and art. Not that I'm against dancing and art. I did a lot of jitterbugging in my time. Dancing, two-step, line dancing, the best. But they bring in dancing and the art. It didn't make any sense. I would rather have a carpenter shop and a wood shop.
Okay, but that's not dangerous. Like, that's not, okay. I can see where parents say, oh, I'd rather have welding or whatever than dance class for my kid, but that's not doing any harm, right? That's not indoctrinating your kids.
The indoctrination is the worst part. We had Common Core come in across the board. Common Core came in for math. Hey, I learned math. 2 + 2 is 4. Not 2 + 2 - 8, subtracted by 320 times 16 and stuff. And how many cows jumped over the moon? I mean, I just like 2 + 2 was 4. That was easy. Why are we teaching this new form of math? Oh, so they become more aware of the mathematical studies. And I learned math. I mean, they could learn math the simple way. And then you move on, progressively move on. Why bring in this Common Core? And then with literature, my God, what a great storyteller. What a great story that he just told about, about Mary Had a Little Lamb and the wolf and the big bad wolf and stuff. Not about the stories pushed aside. Now it's about what was the intent of the author? What does that mean? Well, he told a story about the wolf. He huffed and puffed and blew the house down.
All right, but that's not indoctrination. That's so it sounds like what you're saying is that there was not the indoctrination in your school. But the indoctrination I'm saying is because this is what my children are out of that school district, school level years, right? So I didn't know exactly in the time my kids were in school, it was more like subtle implications, right? It was like subtle tweaks here and there being offered. So I didn't even realize the stuff that my kids were being taught to think and believe in some sense in the schools about our country and about how patriotism is not necessarily a good thing and all this stuff, right? And so it sounds like you're saying, I'm not hearing you say that in your school district, anything was taught about that. Like your school district did not push that this country is a bad place, that socialism's good, that capitalism's bad, that patriotism's bad. You didn't see that in your school.
The teachers we had in our school.
Because that's the difference between, like, why didn't author say that? Like, I hear you.
All right, here.
Grandpa.
I'll say this.
Yeah.
We had teachers in my school, in all the schools, in the school district I taught, that were very liberal in their teaching. Very liberal in their teaching. And the way they taught things, it was not the way that we weren't revisiting history. We were revisiting revisionist history in their perspective and in their professor's perspective from whatever university they graduated. I taught history as it was real. Even whether it went against cultures or example, the Buffalo Soldiers, big poster of Buffalo Soldiers charging down, with their cavalry hats back and the proud name of the Buffalo Soldiers as they're riding down the range, riding down the Native American Indians. And my question was this: why are they held in such adulation by the African-American teachers teaching about the Buffalo Soldiers. I said, here they were free men and they were slaves that were free now, come out west, find 40 acres and a mule and join the cavalry. They joined the cavalry. So here was former slaves that were oppressed, now not oppressing Indians, but killing them. So how did that rationalize in their minds,
So why are they celebrated?
Yeah, why are they celebrated when they, in fact, were the indigenous people were being killed off by these former slaves who lived under oppression? Now they're creating it. But they're not enslaving the Indians to work, for profit. They're killing them. So I find those things, so it's an interpretation of history from the left side to the right side. So this indoctrination of, saying, look at the great contribution of the African-American society. And I'll give it to them, like the Bracero program. When we sent men off to fight in World War II, we brought in the migrant workers to work the fields. My God, who was going to do it? And they worked those fields hard. And a portion of their money was taken to be put in a bank and a holding for them and sent to Mexico. So that way, after the war, they would go back and they'd have a little gold. They'd have a little savings. But what happened is Eisenhower came back, and this is the 5-star general, and he put them all on trains as the president and sent them all back to Mexico, gathered them all up, sent them back to Mexico, only to find out later that all that savings that they had put aside for them was gone. There was nothing there. The government took it, the corrupt government of Mexico. So here on one hand, we praise the culture of Mexico and their supporting us during the war. But in the end, after it's over, then we just send them back, and it's just discarding those that helped us so much. So there's a lot of history that's not taught.
Right.
Not the right way it should be taught.
Right. All right. So what do you think about things like movements to get rid of the Pledge of Allegiance in schools and the national anthem and all of that, like to the movement away from celebrating our country and our patriotism towards sort of attacking it?
Yeah,
and that's my viewpoint, right? So, but I see a lot of parents out there, and there's a lot of news stories and people posting on community pages and whatnot. And I'm following that, and I'm listening to other parents in schools, and I have friends and family who are teachers, and I listen to their conversations about what they're being mandated to do in school and what they're not allowed to do in school and all that. And so my impression is that, and even hearing my kids talk about like why patriotism isn't my own kids who sort of like question like what's so important about patriotism. I'm like, are you serious?
Your father served in sacrifice for patriotism.
But and they appreciate that and they respect that and they value that, but they have also been taught things about patriotism that I disagree with.
That's because they've all gone to college. Patriotism, and that's my point. And get back to my point. All these professors, all these folks they're academians, these professors. And I give it to them. They studied, they got their doctorate, they've written their books. They wrote their books not for the people, they wrote their books for other historians. So all these professors so far to the left, they've never served. They never were drafted. They never had to serve out 2 years in the Peace Corps, the Job Corps, the Marine Corps. They're academians and brilliant men, brilliant scholars for the perspective that they were taught in looking at America's not the greatest nation in the world. Our flag does not represent everyone. I mean, they find everything so critical. Then they want to tear down our statues. I would rather go out there and see Robert E. Lee in a statue and being able to bring a group of kids up there and says, Robert E. Lee, by all accounts, he was a Christian general. Okay. That's the good side of him. But here's the bad side of him, whatever that case might be. To have that statue right there as a teaching tool. Why tear it down and remove it? That is part of history. We cannot remake history. We can't hide the history. So leave those statues in place, good or bad, and come up to them and bring your students and say, This is what I see about Robert E. Lee. He was a Christian general. He was very religious. He freed his slaves after the war. You know, many of them did. George Washington had slaves. After his second term, he freed his slaves. Thomas Jefferson freed his slaves. We missed that. They were just all slaveholders. Okay, tear this statue down. Now let's go blow up Mount Rushmore. All those assholes on the Mount Rushmore, the presidents and Jefferson, Hamilton, all these people owned slaves. Get rid of it. I mean, what, do wipe out our history for what? For this small nucleus of left-wing, progressive, communist, infiltrated, fascist. Okay. Get carried away.
Tell us how you really feel. No, I agree with you on a lot of those points. And that's it. And that's why we sort of tilted the tone of the show to call it, Flex Your Freedom, because freedom encompasses so many. You and I have fought. We still continue to fight for freedom from our own internal struggles, right? Whether it's people that have a hold on us, our past that have a hold on us. You're carrying guilt, you're carrying obligation, a false sense of obligation, right? So freedom comes in all sorts of things: financial, emotional, spiritual, physical, mental. Absolutely.
And you know what? Firsthand, I could attest to that.
Yes, he can. This man is.
Yeah. I am going home to fight for my freedom.
Okay.
That's all.
That's how we don't need to create problems for you here, Krusty, sir, on the show. But I appreciate that. So this is why I have long wanted to sit down with our friend Monsoon here and talk about that, because I understand and respect that people believe that they're trying to make this, that they're making this country better, that there are things we need to do better. There are things we're not good at. There are injustices. There are inequities in this country. So maybe it's good intent, but it's being done in the wrong ways. And I think there's a lot of malicious intent that is manipulating the people with good intent to do bad things, right? And so it's like this crazy circle we're in. And so I love to bring people on who have given so much for our freedom, because I see so many people taking it for granted, just assuming that we're always going to have the luxury of sitting back and criticizing this amazing country. I think our country still is amazing, even though we're in a little bit of trouble right now, right? Maybe we're the laughing stock of the world. Perhaps we will be the laughing stock of history at some point, based on, the vagina hats and the plastic cartons over our faces and CD, like all this, just sheer lunacy that we have seen here for the past few years, right? But I think we can bring it back, and I think we can learn from this and grow from this. And it's important to talk to people.
I totally agree with you. And I just want to let those that are fearful right now and stuff, President Trump did not take nuclear secrets and the buttons home with him, to shoot off missiles. I mean, he didn't do that.
If people believe that garbage, I think we're just in bigger trouble than I thought we were, right? Like nobody says anyone's a saint, right? But to see all this firepower aimed at this one person when all these other people are doing genuine criminal misdeeds, genuine treasonous things, just genuinely horrific things. And then you have this one person who sends out stupid tweets and shoots his mouth off, and maybe we'd be better zipping it a little bit. It just lunacy. But before we end here, we need to mention this cane, walking stick, very important to you.
It's a walking stick. I want to give a shout out to Reuben Arcaleta. He's a Navy veteran, a Vietnam War veteran. He's also a retired police chief, but he goes to places in Colorado, Gallup, New Mexico. He finds his steer, the horns that have fallen off our deer and made from this beautiful desert wood. And he makes these incredible walking canes where as you walk with, I mean, grandfather's spirit, Mother Earth, you feel it all there. You feel that connection. You don't have to start digging a hole in the sand to feel a connection with China that you're never going to reach. You have it right here. This is real. That other woman is not real. Okay, you got to understand that. And so you all know who I'm talking about. Come on. But you know what?
Her name starts with P and rhymes with Pelosi.
Oh, yeah. But I'm not sure who Pelosi is, because she came out in African wardrobe along with all their staff, and they all knelt down and prayed, I imagine.
The problem with Monsoon is he doesn't really tell you what he's actually thinking and feeling. So maybe next time we'll get him to be a little more candid.
You know what? I want to thank What?
Go ahead.
No, I want to thank you for this. I've seen her professional blogs. I've seen the articulate people that you've interviewed. I mean, they've all made sense to me just watching them. And basically I just kind of rambled on, but I'm a rambler. Sometimes you have cowboys that ramble and you have guys that are educated.
One word for you, Krusty. But look, I'm glad that. I'm glad we got to do this.
I'm grateful that you opened your home for me, that you fed me, that you cooked, that you fixed the coffee, the Crown and Coke, took me fishing in the pond. I caught myself.
We don't do this for all of our guests.
Yeah, I caught a 13-pound.
Although we should. We will, if you want to come on.
2 pounds out here, and I threw the line in. I caught a 13-pound frog. I mean, that thing was, it was a big frog.
All right, Krusty.
All right. I want to thank you all. Some for 5. Hoorah!
I got to cut him off. But really, thank you again so much for joining us. And really, every day is a great day to flex your freedom. Let's be sure to thank a veteran every time we see them. Those who serve honorably, I will say. Those who serve with honor, because many do not, but most do.
Yep.
So
I want to say welcome home and a hand salute. Hoorah!
Hoorah.